His Excellency, Dr. George Weah, will speak to his people.
You may have your seat. Madam Weah, First Lady of the Republic of Liberia, Mr. Speaker, President pro tempore, and members of the 54th legislature here present, members of the judiciary, the dean and members of the cabinet and other government officials here present, our distinguished guest speaker, Major Estrada, the Doyen Excellency and members of the diplomatic and consular corps, Mr. Chief of Staff and the gallant men and women of the armed forces of Liberia, former officials of government, here present, traditional leaders, chiefs and elders, political and business leaders, religious leaders, members of the Fourth Estate, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by thanking the Almighty God for giving us the grace to be here today to commemorate the 66th Armed Forces Day, a day which has been set aside to honor the gallant men and women serving in the armed forces of Liberia. On this day, we also remember and pay homage to those who through their service in these armed forces have made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation and its people. Today, we recognize and celebrate 66 years of the unflinching dedication of our dear armed forces of Liberia to the protection of this nation. It is indeed an honor to be the commander-in-chief of these great armed forces, and it is therefore both a pleasing duty and a proud privilege to celebrate with you all on this auspicious occasion in this capacity. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me now take the opportunity to thank this year's keynote speaker for the 66th Armed Forces Symposium in this persons of Ambassador Stephen Rodriguez, the United Nations Development Program resident representative to Liberia, for the splendid speech by him. Mr. Resident Representative of the UNDP will take due note of the recommendations and suggestions you have proffered in your address entitled Fostering Effective Stakeholders Engagement for Sustainable Democracy, which has given us much food for thought. Let me also take this time to appreciate this year's Distinguished Service Order DSO recipient in person of Colonel Washington Boyd, retired, and Lieutenant Colonel Nathaniel, now retired, who served our country tirelessly as pilots in former armed forces of Liberia. I am made to understand that our guest speaker today, Major General Pablo Estrada, Commanding General of the 46th Military Police Command of the Michigan National Guard, also once served here in Liberia in 2010 with Operations Onward Liberty, in providing mentorship for the new armed forces of Liberia. Gracias, Commando. We want to welcome you back home to Liberia. Major General Estrada, bienvenido. Your leadership at the Michigan National Guard is gratefully acknowledged for the support and assistance you are given through mentorship and training which have benefited our armed forces. On behalf of the government of Liberia, I would also like to express our gratitude to the government of the United States through the Office of Security Cooperation for its continued support of the AFL. The contributions of China, Bangladesh, and Egypt are also gratefully acknowledged. The government of Liberia is also grateful to the Republic of Ghana, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone for contributing personnel to the ECOWAS Advisory Training Team, which has been serving in an advisory capacity to the AFL, and also for offering training slot to the AFL. Your mentorship and support have contributed immensely to the restructuring and professional development of the armed forces of Liberia. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, each Armed Forces Day is celebrated to honor a team that is carefully choosing to serve as a path that harnesses efforts for the AFL future training needs and responsibility. This year's Armed Forces Day team, interagency collaboration, working together for peaceful elections, is particularly important as we get closer to the presidential and legislative election that are going to be held in October this year. Historically, the celebration of Armed Forces Day in Liberia is a long-time tradition that is borrowed from the United States of America. I have learned that in 1954, Colonel Francis M. Dean, the then Assistant Chief of Staff and Intelligence Officer of the Armed Forces of Liberia, using the United States concept, conceived that noble idea and recommended that a day be set aside yearly as Armed Forces Day to honor the members of the Armed Forces of Liberia. I am also told that the 11th of February in each year was then set aside by an act of the Liberian legislature to be observed as Armed Forces Day in recognition of the bravery and sacrifice of troops of the Armed Forces of Liberia who had ended the mutiny that took place on February 11, 1909. Since that time, our dear nation has been through a lot of struggle, but time after time we have come out stronger, better and more determined to create a better Liberia. We therefore use this day to champion and honor the past and present members of the Armed Forces of Liberia, because there cannot be a strong democracy without a professional military. As Commander-in-Chief, I have implicit confidence in the ability of our troops and security forces to effectively execute their duties. I have progressively monitored the achievement of the Armed Forces of Liberia, and I have no doubt that it is on the right path to greatness, both locally and in the international community. There are unique capacities that the AFL can bring in supporting civil authority, particularly in our development efforts as a nation. First and foremost, we must continue to strengthen our border control mechanism and remain vigilant against the negatives that could affect the peace and stability of our nations and our people. Similarly, we must not waver to protect ourselves against extremism and the consequences of terrorism. Accordingly, we must be better informed and ensure effective coordination and preparedness between and among our military and civilian laws enforcement agency against any action that could affect our peace, security, and stability. Today, our flag is being carried proudly by our soldiers in the troubled regions of Timbuktu, the Republic of Mali, the Republic of Sudan, and the Republic of South Sudan. Other countries with our troops are making contributions to peacekeeping, include the Republic of Guinea-Bissau and the Democratic Republic of Congo. These are all very volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous missions. Our hearts go out to them, and we look forward to proudly receiving them safely back home at the end of their missions. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me thank Major General Daniel Zianga, the Minister of National Defense, and his able team for the excellent leadership they have manifested in making our armed forces a force for good. Your diligence and dedication in transforming our military have earned you credibility and respectability both at home and abroad. In the same vein, let me thank you, Major General Prince C. Johnson III, Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of Liberia, for your outstanding leadership and sense of discipline and direction that has engendered the confidence of the Liberian people. Congratulations. I know how important the family is to the men and women who serve our country. I want to personally thank all of our military families, husbands, wives, children, and extended family for their continued support, which positively impacts the performance of our troops. I wish to thank all members of the Armed Forces of Liberia, the Force for Good, for your discipline, dedication to duty, and commitment to the responsibility of protecting our territorial integrity, and for the gallantry exhibited by you in executing your mission and tasks wherever you are deployed. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to mention the recruitment drive for new members to join the armed forces, which began in 2022. This is ongoing with 2,335 successful applicants from the 5 regions. The first batch of recruits and officer cadets training began in October last year at the Armed Forces Training Command, comprising 176 recruits and 24 officers. The first batch graduated from the initial entry training in December of last year, and they completed the advanced individual training at the end of last month at the Barclay Training Center. Significantly, we have involved the armed forces in infrastructural development in the country to ensure its contribution, its culture to meeting the needs of Liberians, even while conducting its security operations. I must say that the armed forces have lived up to this opportunity and has been instrumental to numerous infrastructure development efforts of the government so far. The engineer company has been actively involved in the construction and reconditioning of feeder roads and bridges, as well as pedestrian walkways in some towns and villages of our country. These projects are well structured and up to international standard. Also significant was the medical outreach offered to the Liberian people by the armed forces in Po River and the clean-up campaign undertaken by the armed forces personnel in Dupo Road community as part of the Armed Forces Day celebration. For these few reasons, fellow Liberians, we should count ourselves lucky for having such a result-oriented armed forces that you so much, our heroes. Government is aware that all these achievements have occurred even with the numerous challenges faced by the armed forces, including inadequate funding, a lack of manpower, inadequate accommodation for personnel, and insufficient codified policies for administering military justice. However, let me assure you that my administration is making concerted efforts to address these challenges. For example, just recently I approved the court-martial regulations for the armed forces, which will greatly assist the administration of military justice in Liberia. The such regulation will come on board in the coming days. Similarly, as we strive to meet the logistic needs of the armed forces, we are also making effort to meet our training needs by building more capacity for the armed forces training institutions. In this regard, the Armed Forces of Liberia is in the process of establishing its non-commissioned officers academy at the Armed Forces Training Command at Camp Sandy Weah. This academy will not only increase our military capacity, but will also foster and strengthen regional and international ties with foreign militaries. Last year, during the 65th Armed Forces Day celebration, I promised you as your Commander-in-Chief to construct 25 apartments to ease the accommodation challenge in the AFL. The project commenced with the construction of 2 blocks of 5 apartments in Camp Todmore, Banga, Bon County, and 1 block of 5 apartments at the forward operating base, Buchanan, Grand Bassa County. The construction works for these apartments are currently ongoing and are being complemented by the Liberian Agency for Community Empowerment, and being constructed by Building Materials Center Incorporated. 2 blocks of 5 apartments each are expected to be constructed in the vicinity of the 14 military hospitals to serve as accommodation for doctors. Furthermore, I am pleased to say here today that the officers of the armed forces have ably served their country and humanity. I therefore ask all Liberians to join me in thanking the Chief of Staff, Major General Prince C. Johnson III, his predecessor, Honorable Minister of National Defense, Major General Daniel D. Zianga, and the entire officer corps for ably steering the affairs of the armed forces of Liberia. Your exemplary leadership of the armed forces of Liberia is well appreciated. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, despite the challenges in the growth process, we shall continue to make favorable policy to support the armed forces to grow in strength and might. We will continue to look into the future with a new hope and aspiration as we expand our efforts. We understand that there will be challenges in the performance of our duties. However, we ask all Liberians to continuously see the armed forces as a true representation of the Liberian people. Equally, our dear soldiers must remain the people's soldiers as they perform their duties in like manner. I therefore charge Liberians in all walks of life to support the armed forces, to always conduct its function as a professional military that serve the collective interests of all Liberians. My fellow citizens, the challenges we face today as a nation is an embodiment of the path we began about 5 years ago. We have taken bold decisions to change things and restore public confidence in our military and security sector. It has not been easy to achieve this, especially when viewed against the backdrop of limited resources and technical inefficiency. In spite of it all, we did not waver. We all were collectively of the firm belief that our intentions were for the future benefit of our citizens. The investment we have made in the military and in our security sector, with the strong support of our partner, have given all of us the reassurance of a safe and secure society as we come closer to the general and presidential elections that will take place this year. To the members of the National Legislature, we also extend our deep appreciation for upholding your constitutional mandate in supporting the armed forces of Liberia. At the same time, I commend the Defense Committee in both the House of Representatives and the House of Senate. Thank you for your support to the armed forces of Liberia in many forms. As a responsive government, we will continue to work with you to ensure the best for our armed forces. My fellow Liberians, I wish to conclude by thanking you again for your invaluable support to the armed forces of Liberia, which are showing itself as a force for good, and in respect both locally and internationally. I wish our armed forces and the entire Liberian populace a happy 66th Armed Forces Day celebration. May the Almighty God bless Liberia and bless us all. I thank you.
Please be seated. The commander of troops will now request permission from the commander-in-chief to pass the troops in review.
Phil, you can break. Wait.
The commander of troops for today's parade is Major Ernest A.L. Appleton, Commander, 1st Battalion, 23rd Infantry Brigade, Armed Forces of Liberia.
Alongside the President of Commander-in-Chief is the Defense Minister, and also is the
Mention.
Please be seated.
Sir, we have the permission to pass through the review.
The commander-in-chief has given the permission to the commander of troops to pass the troops in review. The commander of troops for today's parade is Major Ernest A.L. Appleton. He's the commander of the 1st Battalion, 23rd Infantry Brigade, Armed Forces of Liberia.
Esse daqui, dia não foi, disse na terra, você tem essa
Today's parade is being executed by the Armed Forces of Liberia, the Liberia National Police, Liberia Immigration Service, the Department of Customs, Liberia National Fire Service, Liberia Drugs Enforcement Agency, Monrovia City Police, Liberia Seaport Police, Forest Park Rangers, National Fisheries and Aquaculture Authority, and the Liberia Scout Association. As the troop pass, they will render a hand salute to the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Liberia. The commander of troops for today's parade is Major Ernest A.L. Appleton, Commander, 1st Battalion, 23rd Infantry Brigade, Armed Forces of Liberia. Members of his staff include the adjutant. The adjutant for today's parade is Captain Aloysius Weah. Other members include Captain Zeke Menza, Captain Abraham Kamara, Grace Samolu, First Lieutenant Clift Moulton, and the Sergeant Major is Sergeant Major Makate Guisi. The Armed Forces of Liberia Band is under the direction of Warrant Officer Gurley Merchant. The beautiful display by the Armed Forces of Liberia Band has been done by Warrant Officer Gurley Merchant. First Battalion, commanding 1st Battalion is Captain Emmanuel D. Wilson. Other members of the staff include Captain Milton P. Toh, Captain Bondo Fawaz, First Lieutenant Lawrence Nipa, First Lieutenant Josiah Inez Jr. The Alpha Company 1st Battalion is commanded by First Lieutenant James K. Bologna Jr. His guidon bearer is Sergeant Bani and family. And the first sergeant is First Sergeant Lawrence Dennis. Bravo Company 1st Battalion is commanded by First Lieutenant Jeff Gompu Buang. His guidon bearer is Sergeant Musa Keita. And the first sergeant is First Sergeant Jefferson Barkley. Charlie Company 1st Battalion is commanded by First Lieutenant Brown Blambo Melvin. His guidon bearer is Sergeant Jonathan Jackson. And the first sergeant is First Sergeant Emmanuel Bryan. 2nd Infantry Battalion is commanded by Captain Alvin Tobabu. Members of the staff include First Sergeant Ruben Dix, First Lieutenant Ruben Dix, First Lieutenant Ansu Sharif, First Lieutenant Mansford Small. Alpha Company 2nd Battalion is commanded by First Lieutenant Abraham Hodges. His guidon bearer is Private First Class Teddy Bala. And the first sergeant is First Sergeant Benedict Adjuvant. Bravo Company 2nd Battalion is commanded by First Lieutenant Patrick Golo Togba. Charlie Company 2nd Battalion is commanded by First Lieutenant Abraham N. His guidon bearer is Sergeant Obadiah O.S. Jabu. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the passing of the colors. The Armed Forces Training Command is commanded by First Lieutenant Emmanuel Y.Z. Molba. The guidon bearer is Private First Class Peter Yeji. Please be seated. The Logistic Command is commanded by First Lieutenant Jeremiah Y. Wallace. Commanding the Medical Command is 2nd Lieutenant Samson Paul. His guidon bearer is Corporal Ranklin Glade. Commanding the Liberian Coast Guard is Lieutenant Dixie Agbo. His guidon bearer is PO2 Archibald Peters. And the Command Sergeant Major is Siki Sylvester D. Commanding the paramilitary staff is Chief Inspector Princess D. Pavo of the Liberia National Police. The Liberia National Police is commanded by Inspector Daniel S. Bade. The Liberia Immigration Service is commanded by Captain Bernice Williams. Commanding the Department of Customs is Officer Sam S. Cooper. Liberia National Fire Service is commanded by Major Godmercy Toh. The flag bearer is Emmanuel Parker. The Liberia Drugs Enforcement Agency is commanded by Special Agent Lawrence Lina. The flag bearer is Agent Vicky B. Tayo. The Monrovia City Police is commanded by Lieutenant Dave B. Davis. The flag bearer is Sergeant Luther Parker. The Liberia Seaport Police is commanded by Lieutenant Vanny Sen. The flag bearer is Lieutenant Nathaniel Toe. The Park Rangers of the Forestry Development Authority is commanded by Captain L. Amara Konoa. The guidon bearer is Officer Sando T. Bapa. Commanding the National Fisheries and Aquaculture Authority is Inspector Fode J. Kalon. The flag bearer is Inspector Catherine B. Myers. The Liberia Scout Association is commanded by Commissioner Henry G. Watson. That is the Cougar Ammo Personnel Carrier. The Cougar Ammo Personnel Carrier is being commanded by Captain Vanny Conan. Liberian Coast Guard. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's parade ceremony. Please remain in the stand until the official party departs. On behalf of the President of the Republic of Liberia and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Liberia, His Excellency Dr. George Manuel Weah, the Honorable Minister of National Defense, Major General Daniel D. Siankan Jr., retired, and the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of Liberia, Major General Prince Charles Johnson III, thank you for attending today's Armed Forces Day Parade ceremony. I have been your moderator, First Lieutenant G. Randy Ellis, Public Affairs Officer, Armed Forces of Liberia. Along with me has been a non-commissioned officer in charge of the parade, Sergeant Barney Jesse Gay. The troops will parade the principal streets of Monrovia.
The troops will parade the principal streets of Monrovia.
Please remain in the stand until the official party departs.
Will be departing the commander-in-chief. I will be conferring a little bit
So that's how we come to the end of this 66 Armed Forces Day program. Yeah, we've been on our program. Yeah. Oh, I mean, very worth it. So we say thank you for watching. The President, His Excellency George Manuel will be taking the lead, and so we say thank you so much.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the President of the Republic of Liberia and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Liberia and the First Lady of the Republic of Liberia will now depart. Please remain in the stand until the Commander-in-Chief leaves. Thank you.